Hi there, my name is Amoshala and welcome to another video. Now this video is part 2 of the 3-part series video that I'm making titled Vine to Wine, Understanding the Value of Preparation on Your Way to Purposeful Impact, right? So in my first video, in case you missed it, I'm just going to recap a little bit. In my first video, I talked about the process of vine planting. Now the vine is what produces the grapes that is required to go through the process in order for us to have the end product, which is the wine. So in my first video, I actually touched on how vines are actually planted in rocky places, in what we consider bad soil, intentionally by the vineyard owner, because the longer the vine stays in the ground trying to grasp onto the nutrients, the deeper it takes root and the better the grapes will be when they finally start to come out. So basically, in other words, when the vines are planted in obscurity, the harder they need to work, the harder they need to fight to get the nutrients that they require, so that by the time they come up to notoriety, they come up fruitful, they come up juicy, they come up with quality, not just quantity, right? And I relate this back to us as human beings, that sometimes God plants us in struggle, not so that we die, but so that we take root and grow the way we're supposed to, so that by the time he gives us the come up, by the time we level up, we come up with quality, we're able to withstand the pressures that life will throw at us when we are in notoriety, right? So that's what I talked about in my first video. And sometimes the struggle might look like, for me, it was the death of my father when I was 13. That was my struggle that God has planted me in, because when that happened, my life actually changed 360 degrees, right? I went from a child who had access to everything to a child whose mother had to struggle just so that we could even eat or pay the bills, right? So I don't know what your struggle may look like, but God has planted you there for a reason, and that's just what I talk about in the first video. Now in this video, I want to talk about when that process of when that period of being on the ground in the rocky place is starting to germinate fruit. When the fruit is starting to grow, right? The vineyard owner does not just abandon the fruit. Now, when he sees that the fruit is starting to come out, when he sees that the fruit is starting to grow, he takes extra effort to protect the fruit from harsh conditions, right? Because the grapefruit does not need too much exposure, right, to the sun, or too much exposure to the rain. Just right amounts of water, right amount of sunlight is what is required for that grape to be the best quality, because their mind is fixated on the end product. In order for them to get the end quality of wine, the grapes have to be in good condition so that it produces the quality of wine that they are envisioned or that they had in mind when they decided to plant that vine. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the grapes. Now, you've been through obscurity, you've struggled for a while, you've tried to gather as much as you can, you've developed, you've taken root. Now you start to bear fruit. Maybe you went from being jobless to getting a job. Maybe you went from being barren to having a child. Or maybe you went from being single to becoming married. Or maybe you went from somebody with deep emotional issues and you're starting to heal, you're starting to see some light, you're starting to bear fruit. You can encourage somebody else because you've been through it, and you start to come up. Now, I want you to know that because you come up and because you're starting to bear fruit does not mean the process is over. There are still external conditions that can take you out. And that is where God still shows up, where he protects us. He keeps us in the shield. No too much rain, no too much sunlight. Now, it looks as if all of the effort you're producing is not giving you the results that you intended. You are getting results, but not the results you think you should be getting. Right? Maybe you were supposed to be married at 25, now you're married at 35, and then you're facing some issues when it comes to giving birth to kids. Or maybe you've been out of school for years, and then you're looking at, okay, I've been out of school for the past 5 years. I'm supposed to be working. I'm supposed to be, running my own business, and things are not looking the way they should. You're not doing too badly. At least you're no longer in that rocky place, but still you're not where you should be yet. This video is for you. I'm talking to you, right? I'm talking to you in this video. So you're now growing into that grapefruit. you're growing into that grapefruit, I want you to know that when the grapefruit is growing, the vineyard owner comes back and does something called pruning. Now, pruning is when you trim a tree or a shrub or a bush or a plant, cutting away dead or overgrown branches or stems to encourage growth. I'll say that again. Pruning is when you trim a tree, a shrub, or bush, cutting away the dead parts or the overgrown branches or stems to encourage growth. So when those grapes are growing, the vineyard owner comes back and he trims, he prunes them, he cuts away the dead parts, the parts that will hinder it from growing, he cuts that away so that they can bear more fruit. Now the vineyard owner is not coming there to cut away the grapes to kill them. Why would he do that? He has taken all the time to plant them, to nurture them. Now they're on the come up. Why would he want to kill them now? No. So he comes to prune them so that they grow more and they bear more fruit. Now I want you to know that when we are on the come up, sometimes we will suffer some setbacks. Right? You think, oh, I'm on the come up, everything is looking okay, not quite where I want to be, but at least I'm not where I am. And then you experience a setback. That's pruning. And I want you to know, I want to be able to understand the differentiation between when you're being pruned and when there's an attack from the enemy. You know that as children of God, the Bible says when we rebuke the devil, he will flee from us. When we rebuke and it doesn't go away, you should understand that this is pruning. This is God taking you through it. And there are some things that we actually bring upon ourselves by the work of our hands, either through us just being plainly stupid or just being disobedient. There are some pruning that we bring upon ourselves. But I want you to know that if God allows us to go through it and survive it, it's all going to work out for our good. So the vineyard owner comes back and he prunes the grape, he shapes it so that it bears more fruit. Right? So you might be going through a pruning process in your life. I want you to be joyful about it, for the Bible tells us that God disciplines those whom he loves. Right? So your pruning phase is not designed to take you out. You've survived being in obscurity for so long. You're now on the come up. You're now on the rise. I want you to know that even more than before, you still need to be prayerful. You still need to seek the face of the Lord, because the pruning phase is your growth phase, and you want to get to the end product of the wine. You want to make sure that you grow the way God has intended for you to grow, right? Now, when the pruning phase is over and the vineyard owner has trimmed the grapes start to bear plump fruit, right? Now it's time to harvest it. Now, one thing I found really interesting is that the vineyard owner has to know when the right time to harvest those products, those grapes rather, because the grape is not like other fruits. Like you can harvest the banana early and then put the banana on your tabletop and leave it for a while and it will get ripe. A grape is one of those fruits that do not continue to ripen after you have harvested it. So you need to know the right time to actually harvest it right from the vineyard, because you don't want to do it too early and you don't want to do it too late, right? So this is where we have to understand the seasons and the times in our lives. God will not put us out there before we are required to, unless we just stop growing and we just die. Our growth gets stifled, by the world and the attacks of the enemy. So we don't want to put ourselves out there too early. At the same time, you don't want to go out too late, where the enemy has come and stolen the people God has put in your care to serve, right? So we need to understand the seasons and the times in our lives. And I do hope this video has blessed you, that you're now one step closer to understanding what God is doing in your life, that he's not here to take you out. Whatever you're going through is not here to kill you. And please look out for part 3, where we tie it all together and understand how the wine actually forms.